You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, we are discussing Fuck the Border, Track 2 on 2001's Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. The first edition of the record came out February 6th, 2001 on Fat Records, and the newly remixed and remastered edition of the album came out on November 12th, 2021. The song also appears as the second song on the Live from Occupied Territory live DVD from 2007 and is also available as a digital download on the Propaganda Bandcamp. The demo version with the alternative chorus appears as track 18 on the digital and CD editions of the 2021 reissue.
All of that is very exciting too. I love the fact that there is that demo version on the new reissue. It's just such a fabulous little Easter egg right there on the end of that brand new record. And I was digging into this song a little bit, and I went to the website to get the lyrics, and which I always do, and because they have all the revisions there, like they change the lyrics a little bit sometimes for what they would sing if they wrote it like now and as who they are as people now. So I always go to the website, and there's a note attached to this song on the website, and it reads, quote, "Some people have to stay and fight for survival in the country they live in, while others have to leave to survive. Corporations cross international borders all the time in search of people to exploit for profit, and no one stops them. They call it globalization. On the other hand, the victims of corporate domination are told that they can't cross borders in search of better lives and are forced to stay and deal with the social, economic, and environmental messes the companies leave behind when they inevitably move their operations to places with even more favorable business climates, such as lower wages, lax environmental laws, and tax breaks. Looks like capitalism and human rights don't mix," which we'll get into all of these examples. I found so many examples of this about how businesses are able to go pretty much where they please, but the people who work at those businesses and oftentimes pay the price for downsizing and outsourcing and things like that oftentimes can't really do the exact same thing. So there are privileges afforded to large corporate interests that are not afforded to human beings. So it's a really well said little summary on the website. And if anybody wants that, they can go to the website and check it out if they want to reread it.
You know, Greg, looking over that this week, I feel like we could kind of stop the episode there. I've been really thinking about how that summarizes the lyrics so well. And given the terrible comments we've had to comb through in preparation for this, that treat the song as unintelligent, uninformed, and unrealistic, just copying and pasting this would be such a great, I don't know, counter or addendum, or to help people understand what is actually being said with the lyrics that they weren't able to take away from the lyrics just themselves.
Yeah, there are a lot of really just ugly anti-human being comments in the YouTube videos for this song over and over and over. It's like the same boring people over and over. So if you want to go really bum yourself out after you hear this episode, you can go scroll through the comments of Fuck the Border on YouTube for a couple hours, and you can live through what Keith and I have gone through for the last couple of weeks.
Well, just thinking of something positive, I will say that I love the propaganda shirt that references this song with the super unique artwork. It says "No fences, no borders." It's one of my favorite shirts, and I've been looking for the artwork for it to find an original, and I've just not been able to figure out what was actually, or who was actually behind it.
So your theory was that it was Eric Drucker, correct?
Yeah.
So Eric Drucker's artwork is absolutely amazing. And I went down a rabbit hole searching for this artwork too, just to find the one without the propaganda written on it, just that drawing itself. So I was scrolling through Eric Drucker's artwork for hours looking for it. And I wound up on his website and I saw that he has signed prints of the Potemkin City Limits artwork on his website, where you can buy signed Eric Drucker prints of the Potemkin City Limits album artwork on his website. It's like, I was like, oh my gosh. So I went and looked at the price of it and I was like, okay, not within my budget for the time being. But it is there for anybody out there looking for something absolutely amazing. You can go and check that out. But I thought it was Eric Drucker also. But when you and I were both unsuccessful in finding it, because we do our homework on these, like we look for this stuff, but I messaged Todd and he said that he drew that t-shirt and that he doesn't know where the original is, but that the original for that shirt was also scratched out on blackboard. So the original is white on black also. So that's how the original appears, like on like white writing on a black t-shirt. So that's kind of the story behind the artwork of that t-shirt. But Keith, speaking of empires, I bought you a Christmas present that I haven't given you yet. So I found you a copy of Empires on red clear vinyl, the original pressing, that I got a decent deal on. And I've been too paranoid to mail it to you because the United States Postal Service seems intent on destroying itself from within. So maybe I already told you about this, but you own, but do not possess one of the 549 original pressings of clear red vinyl. So I just wanted to tell you that I got you a Christmas present that you haven't gotten yet.
Yeah, I don't think you specifically told me that, just that you have a massive box of vinyl to give me that you're unwilling to send in the mail.
It's really bad.
Whenever we cross paths again.
Yeah, there's more than just Empires, I promise. But like, I'm like so scared that I'm going to send this insanely rare collection of propaganda stuff in the mail to you, and it will just disappear into the void of the planet. So anyway, but I just wanted to tell you that because I had a good time getting that.
Well, that's super generous and thoughtful, and I'm stoked to have a copy, add it to my collection and to listen to it. Of course, it's like, Greg, you're a punk rock Santa Claus, so I really appreciate it. So, well, let's get down to business here. I know that you're excited about the guest who's here to talk about Fuck the Border.
Todd Kowalski is here to talk about Fuck the Border. You can't imagine a more perfect guest on this one. And I got to thinking in the lead up to the episode, I wanted to get Todd back on the show because he was here for Dark Matters with his brother Kent, which was an absolute honor. But I was thinking about the fact that this was originally an I Spy song, the fact that it had a different version that the band that Propaganda was playing as early as December of 1996 live. I thought about the fact that, Recess Records had worked with I Spy, and we've talked to Todd Conjolier from Recess Records on the show before. And I also thought about the fact that there was the Empires reissue that just came out. So I was like, Todd, we need to do a full scope conversation about Fuck the Border, from its earliest versions with I Spy to bringing it into Propaganda, to modifying it into its original version, and then talking about the Todd's reflections on the brand new reissue. So we had so much to talk about on this episode, and we had a really good in-depth conversation about the history of I Spy and joining Propaganda and Fuck the Border itself. But a couple of really cool things that I want to say before we get into my conversation with Todd is that I got in touch with Todd Conjolier from Recess Records, who was on our Portage La Prairie episode, number 44, way back when. And Todd Conjolier has about 500 copies of the I Spy Revenge of the Little Shits 10-inch at Recess Records in California. And he has generously given us a discount code for listeners of this podcast. There's no strings attached. He didn't pay me to do this. Like, I asked him if he would do a promotion for the I Spy 10-inch. So if you go to recessrecords.com right now and you maybe buy a copy of I Spy Revenge of the Little Shits, but anything else in Recess Records online store, and you type I Spy 20 at checkout, you can get a 20% discount on your entire order from Recess Records. So be sure to do that. iSpy20 at checkout at recessrecords.com. So thank you so much to Todd Congelier for doing that. I hope y'all will consider buying a copy of that iSpy 10-inch. And we have one more cool thing. Keith, do you know the print company Vitchcraft in Chicago? They do the bandanas.
Yeah.
Say, I'll call you on your shit, you call me on mine. And then they also have the Fuck the Border print that is really beautiful and lovely.
I don't own anything, but I have a couple things squirreled away in my mental to buy list. Their art and their print is really neat.
Wonderful. So I got in touch with Vitchcraft. I believe I'm saying that right. But if you go to vichcraft.shop, vichcraft.shop, there is a Fuck the Border print in that store currently on sale, marked at $16, down from $18, and $10 of that sale is donated to the ACLU. So we got a couple little cool things for, at Recess Records and at Vitchcraft in relation to this episode that I just wanted to tell everybody about. So you can get a really cool print for a really good price, and then a lot of the proceeds go to a good cause. And then you can also help Todd Congelier clear out his warehouse of 500 copies of the iSpy 10-inch from 1994. So come on, go do these things. Check them out at least. And we're going to get to friend of the pod and Propagandy bassist and vocalist Todd Kowalski right now. So please enjoy our conversation. Todd, welcome back to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propagandy.
Thank you, Gregors.
It is delightful to have you here. Todd, last time I saw you, I was in Winnipeg, and now I'm back here in Buffalo. And I'm curious how, your reflections are about those trio of hometown shows and how things have been for you since those shows.
Those were a good time, I thought. It was fun to get rolling again just a little bit, play some shows. And since then, we just been making new songs at our little jam space there. And yeah, it's going pretty good. So it's good.
Nice. How often are you all getting together?
We were like 3 times a week there. And now just because of Christmas, we slowed down for a second, and then we'll be back at it.
Wonderful. Are you feeling pretty excited about some of the stuff that you've been putting together riff-wise? I know last time you were here when you were with Kent, you were talking about putting together some riffs. And we also talked about how Victory Lap had 2 Todd songs. And I'm wondering how you're feeling about your material for the next record.
Good. I have lots of stuff on the go, and yeah, it's good. And Chris has started going really good too. So yeah, we're sitting pretty good at this point. Usually we're off to a slower start than this, so it's good.
Very nice. Well, hopefully the pandemic, it was like the enforced vacation can lead to some pretty beautiful productivity if people are able to channel that energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's either. Yeah, I think it's pretty good because I haven't been going to some things that I usually do, so it's kind of good.
Excellent. Well, the reason why you're back on the podcast here is to talk a little bit about the song Fuck the Border, which has a pretty long history. So we're going to go back a little bit and talk about your band before Propagandy. I Spy, one of your bands before Propagandy. And we've never really talked about I Spy on the podcast with you. And since Fuck the Border is attached to I Spy, I'm really excited to talk about some of those memories that you may have. And a lot of people out there who are listening may never have listened to I Spy, and they still totally can. And so I'm kind of looking to promote that band as well. So can you do a little bit of an overview of I Spy? Maybe start off with who was in the band and talk a little bit about where you were based when the band was active.
I guess I Spy started almost before me. All the other guys were jamming with our friend Dave Waller. I actually didn't know any of them at the time, but the first time I ever saw those guys, they were playing in a park, and they were trying to do they did a cover of Aces High by Iron Maiden. And of course, the song's impossible to sing. So Dave's singing wasn't all the best on it, but I took note that like, I can't believe those guys played the whole song, like with all the solos and that. Or it's not that I couldn't believe it. I was just like, fuck, pretty rad. They pulled that off for the most part, you know? Like, I didn't know them or anything. But I had them, it somehow stuck in my head, and I moved to Winnipeg, but I would go back in the summer to Regina, and I had them in my head, those guys, because they were also played like some punk songs, like I think like I don't know what, I can't remember, but so like I was like, maybe those guys, like without without the singer. I don't know how I did it, but I asked my friend Marlon, I was like, do you think those guys would want to jam with me? And he's like, I'll ask them. And they did. They didn't even know who I was. So
nice.
I don't know how that happened. But I got into the basement. I had my song. It's one of the bonus songs on the, I can't even remember what it's called, but on that Perversity is Spreading record, it's one of the bonus songs. Was the first song we ever played. And I remember starting to play it. For some reason, like, I don't do this with Propaganda, but I just stepped in with my guitar, started playing it and singing the song as if like here it is, you know, like full on, like
nice.
And like I just remember them lighting up, like their faces, you know, especially Rary, the guitar player. Like I just remember looking over, like he's just like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know that feeling well.
Yeah, and and then James the drummer, he's just such an immediate person that he just started, like we were playing the first minute as if it was a show.
Nice.
Like, he's just playing, like he just started drumming along, and as soon as the bass, Rary and Dave, the other two guys, got the hang of the song, yeah, we were just playing it as if we were playing a concert. And I jumped off James' mom's couch, hit my head on the roof, knocked myself out unconscious for a second.
The first day?
Yeah, first day.
Excellent.
And then, I just felt like we really like all kind of hit it off. And that went for, I guess the summer. And me and James were just hanging around all the time, driving around in his mom's car, you know, listening to Sepultura and stuff, just reclining at nights in parking lots, just listening to whatever, punk records, metal records, everything, and all that shit. We liked sort of different punk bands, but we'd seen enough and liked enough that were similar that we could, I was more into like The Accused and I guess the more heavy metallic type punk stuff, and James was more into like maybe like the Descendants and kind of, you know what I mean, more of the kind of poppier stuff.
Sure.
But we were both into the Nils, this Canadian band, the Doughboys, No Means No, SNFU. So like we had enough that was like similar, and I like the Descendants a lot too, actually, and just like I lean towards the kind of heavier stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And then so we were just rocking. Then I went back to Winnipeg. I think we played a couple shows that summer, I think. Yeah, we did actually. And I think we even came and played in Winnipeg. Yeah, we were just kind of getting going. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we came and played in Winnipeg before I moved back. And just by chance, actually, and I have a picture of it somewhere, but Chris and Samson were both at that show. And I think like Chris has a memory of walking in and I would used to see Chris outside record stores and stuff. Like I was just like I was new to Winnipeg, but as such a music enthusiast, you know? So he recognized me as like, hey, that's the guy that's always like around record stores and shit, you know?
Yeah.
And so he was watching and he was like, oh, this is like, he liked it, you know, him and Samson. And like the picture that I have of the show is like, I recognize I didn't know any of them at the time, but I recognized every single person in the picture. Which is
question about that picture. Did you provide that picture to Sheldon Burney for the Missing Like Teeth book?
Maybe if it's like from behind the stage and you can see Chris and John and
I think I've seen that picture. I think it's in Sheldon's book.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Right on. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of funny. And then yeah, but then those guys all like went back to Regina. So, but I kind of felt like we made a tape of the Winnipeg show.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like listening to I had all winter to listen to the tape. And I was like, this tape's not cutting it, or sorta, like I was like, we need all new songs.
Yeah.
Is what I thought, except for like maybe one or two. And then so all winter I was just like making these new songs. And I remember going back at Christmas and like I had whatever the first song is on the Propaganda 10-inch.
Uh-huh.
Like I remember playing just like James lived in just the world's shittiest house. And I remember us being in the basement and just starting playing it and like seeing those guys light up again, like the same way, like just for some reason, especially Rary, like he just, like I could just see he was just like something like the way that he would receive songs really egged me on,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I remember just like, okay, we're way better now,
Yeah.
like still not the peak of humanity, but like we're like better, like now we sound like a band that we would listen to,
Excellent.
you know what I mean? Like I would
Yeah,
listen to this band, at least at the time.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and so yeah, but that was just for Christmas holidays. But over the course of the rest of the winter, I guess they were sold enough on it. Or I guess I went back another summer. We did more shows. Then we came back actually and did a show with Propaganda with us opening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Chris and John liked the last show they saw. And I guess probably over the year, me and Chris were saying hi to each other or something,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then we came back. We played a show with Propaganda, and I remember we actually all flipped a coin to see who would play like last, and then we didn't want to be last,
Of course,
But
yeah.
the coin, I remember the coin flip like going exactly in our favor, like second last.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there was 4 bands. I was like, okay, that's exactly where I want to be, And yeah, I remember like we played super, super good that particular show, and Propaganda kicked ass. Like I would say it's like one of the highlight shows probably for me.
Yeah. And that was in Winnipeg?
Yeah, in Winnipeg. And it was full, like Propaganda was like kind of kicking off. How to Clean wasn't out yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like yeah, I think it was, yeah, they were just still kind of making it. And then what happened? Oh yeah. And then yeah, all those guys went back to Regina. But I think they were sold enough that they all moved to Winnipeg like right after, like them and our friend Lorna. And so we were all living in the same, actually they moved into a different house, but then they got robbed, all our equipment got stolen. And, then they moved into our house. Just as Chris was leaving, like he was going to move into a house with the guys from Red Fisher and all that, which was kind of a funny little switch over. We had a big R for Rary, like we put it on the wall, like, okay, Rary's here now, taking over. And yeah, Chris for a while he was like had like leavers remorse, because me and him were such good friends, and he's kind of protesting sleeping in this car in the yard for a couple nights.
Oh my God.
Mostly for a joke, like and then
let me back in.
Yeah, and then he actually slept. I had this little single bed on the floor, and like a child's bed basically. Yeah, and then he came and we were both slept in the child's bed for one night. And it was so funny. That night was just insane. We were laughing so hard, and then yeah, the next day he was gone. It was like okay, we've milked this for all we can, and then and then what else? I don't know. That's not even a good story, but
so well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then yeah, we just kept riffing it up. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so as far as I can tell, I Spy has 4 releases. You've got Perversity is Spreading, which came out, I think it was posthumously on G7. Then there's
Yeah.
Revenge of the Little Shits, 10-inch
that's
on
the second one.
Recess.
Yeah.
I Quit Your Army, Wiener, which is a split 7-inch with the German band But Alive, and then the I'd Rather Be Flag Burning 10-inch split
Yeah.
with Propaganda, also on Recess Records. But then
Right.
there's also the When We Grow Up 5-inch split, which came out on the Play at Your Own Risk box set Volume 2 with Recess.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about like the order of the release of these records that I Spy did.
Well, the first, besides that live tape, the first recording ever of I Spy was the 10-inch.
The Propaganda one?
Yeah, like we never once listened to hear what we sound like.
Okay.
Like we never had a tape player to record it or whatever, or no one thought, I don't know what, we just, like I remember hearing our songs being played back like, that's what that song sounds like. Yeah, it was really weird.
Nice.
And, so it's that, then Revenge.
Okay.
Then that 5-inch, then that Perversity is Spreading. It's just a collection of the other two, really.
When did Quit Your Army come out?
That was the last. Those songs were recorded at the same time as the Revenge of the Little Shits.
Okay,
It's
gotcha.
the same recording, just yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Revenge of the Little Shits, because there are still copies of this record widely available from Recess Records, the original 90s pressing. Todd Conjolier at Recess has 845 copies, he said, that he would very much like to sell. And so I did a little bit of digging on some information on this record. So it has 10 songs produced by John Sutton, came out on Recess. And, I'm wondering if you have any like reflections on the Revenge of the Little Shits specifically, because I would like for everybody out there listening to actually buy this thing, because there are copies available and you don't have to pay through the nose like you do for some other like old vinyl and things like that. So I'm just wondering about your thoughts on this particular record.
That record, I like it. I haven't listened to it for like 10 years or something, but like I kind of try not to dwell on the past or something for some reason. I don't like to go back, but I remember liking it all. I'm sure there's like, and we were going to go tour the States like as soon as the record, like a month later, so we couldn't like postpone it or anything,
Mm-hmm.
Just the way things roll like in real time, but I still felt like when we recorded, I was like, the songs are roughly what we want, like you record in 1 or 2 days in that time too. So it's just like, okay, we got our songs, and they were actually recorded in Mark from he's our sound guy now.
Oh yeah.
Basement. Yeah. So they're recorded in his basement actually.
No way. That's awesome. Did he have like a
so
studio back then? Was he recording other bands too?
He recorded the Choke record and a few other things, but I think maybe he decided he was more of a live sound guy. Yeah.
That's very cool.
He wasn't there very much, and and I remember the highlight of that was which Barney claims he didn't have these, but we went into his room closet and he had white jeans, and I remember Sutton putting on his white jeans, walking around wearing them for a while. But
oh man,
he claims he never had white jeans, but he did. So.
Nice.
It's been a point of contention for the last 30 years.
Well, it's on the record now on the podcast. So as far as everybody out there listening knows, this is like stone cold fact. So it is now documented forever. Did you do the artwork for the Revenge of the Little Shits 10-inch?
Yeah. It actually, the real pic, like it was no work of art, but the real picture looked way better than the final pressing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it had these nice kind of purples in it, like on the mountain. Like I was trying to get the same colors from that government issue record U.
Yeah.
So it looked a lot nicer. It was still this cheap, shitty guy who can't draw at the time, but it's like, it looked nicer. So.
Nice. Well, and that's I love that government issue record as well. Jordan and I talked about that for a long, long time when he was on the podcast. Really. That was a ton of fun. Okay, so I'm assuming the Revenge of the Little Shits came out with Recess because of the pre-existing relationship, because of the I'd Rather Be Flag Burning 10-inch. Is that how that relationship all came to be?
Recess. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris was like, yeah, it was basically just Chris, like, oh, he's saying, hey, Todd, you got to hear this band, and I think you liked it. Yeah.
Excellent. So that Propaganda I Spy split 10-inch comes up over and over again as being like a clear fan favorite for longtime Propaganda listeners. Like, so many people have told me just how essential that record was. And I'm curious where it stands for you as someone who you play now in the band that's on one side of the record, but you then played on the other side of the record. So this has got to be like a really like a kind of a special release for you, I would imagine. How do you feel about that split 10-inch in general?
I guess I don't spend too much time thinking about it, but I like the song "Mutual Friend" on the Propaganda side a lot.
Heck yeah.
I think that's one of the ones I like on there the best. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like we made our songs, made the record, and we're stoked to have it. I thought, I don't know. It did, like, obviously it helped I Spy. Like, it was going to be like I Spy go on tour with Propaganda through Texas or something.
Yeah.
And then it kind of didn't happen. And like, kind of guess the condolence prize, like, from Chris and Jordan was, okay, how about you guys be on the other side of this 10-inch with us? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And yeah, Lorna, the woman that came with the other guys, I Spy guys, with, actually paid for our recording. Or, like, we paid her back, obviously. But then, like, me, her, Rary, James, and Dave, and Samson, actually, like, maybe Chris, and that he was probably doing it somewhere else. But yeah, I remember. Well, I specifically remember me, Lorna, Samson, and James and Rary, like, folding, like I think there was 20,000 or something of them, like, of the CDs.
Yeah.
And we were out of cardboard.
Yeah.
Like, putting stickers, gluing, it's an insane amount. Like, I remember, I think the first batch was like 6,000 or something. Then they pressed more. So, I remember, yeah, getting to about 1,500 and just being like, holy shit.
Yeah. I love those.
Then we went to, like, the kind of the brown photocopied version.
That's the one that I have.
Okay, and then we're like, okay, all we have to do is fold these up and stuff them in here,
Yeah, because they go in like that plastic sleeve. I've got that one.
Yeah. So that was like our upgrade. But initially, like, we were like cutting with scissors the cardboard to fit, folding the cardboard, gluing the sides, and putting the sticker on. And
yeah, that's the one that I know Beeve has, because I Beeve held up his copy when I was talking to him on Zoom one time, and that's the one he's still got his original one that he bought in like 1995.
Yeah, and it's got kind of flowers on it.
Yep. And it's like, it's all hand folded, and it's just got that big sticker on the front of it. Yeah, those are really cool. That's awesome. And well, so recently also, I came across a couple of really affordable copies of the Play at Your Own Risk box set and the trifold edition, and sent one up your way. And I'm wondering how it felt to, like, unpack that thing, because I was really pleased to be able to send that.
Yeah, it's cool to see. Like, I kind of forgot about the artwork in there.
Yeah, I love that 5-inch too. I mean, that's a really cool little thing. Like, whenever we started this podcast, I didn't even know that 5-inch even existed. And to find out about that, like, that's the kind of thing that, like, doing this kind of show, like, I've discovered all these little extra things that y'all have done over the years that are just so neat to discover as somebody who considered themselves like a super fan of the band. And then to discover how many things I didn't know about, that's just been such a thrill. So I'm glad that you're able to get one of those now as well, because those are really, it's a cool little box set. Okay, so recently, we're going to transition a little bit here, and I don't know how smooth this segue is, but whatever. But recently I was talking to Beeve, about night letters.
Okay.
And he and I were both talking about how, since you're the bassist in Propagandy, that people who are a fan of Propagandy associate you so much with bass, but and not as much with guitar. But you play guitar in I Spy, and your riffs and Propagandy and your songs are a massive part of the discography over the last 20 years. And so before we talk about Fuck the Border itself, I'm wondering if you can talk to the listeners a little bit about your like guitar regimen and like how you engage with an instrument that Propaganda fans don't really associate with you unless they know your I Spy history. So I'm wondering a little bit about your guitar habits.
Well, after I do a little exercising in the morning, I just get right to it. Just like that's the first thing I do. Just go to my guitar and just start playing. I have not like a the pedal where you just press it and whatever you just played. So I spend a lot of time just jamming with myself, improvising.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll just play jazz, anything. I just kind of play different styles all the time. I play a lot of like bluegrass guitar. Everything. I practice like a lot every day. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself first and foremost a guitarist?
Sort of, I guess. Like in a way, to myself, probably to no one else.
Nice. Well, an episode that's going to come out before this one is the Night Letters episode, where I did talk to Beeve about when he joined the band, and he felt that learning Night Letters was sort of his like major turning point of realizing that he was actually good enough to be in the band. Like he said that Night Letters was like the moment of truth for him. I'm wondering what you remember about like sitting in your house with Beeve and working on the riffs for that particular song, just to see how those stories like overlap a little bit, because people will hear that episode right before this one.
Yeah. Well, I got a new guitar. That's what I mostly remember. I got one of those John Petrucci guitars from Dream Theater.
Nice.
I just fucking got it and just started riffing, I was just sitting on my couch, and it was like I had all kinds of stuff that I was like observing, and in the city and people I know while riffing,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just remember thinking, I think this is going to be a good one if I can get the right lyrics, And then it kind of like I was sitting on the bus, and the idea of some of the lyrics were like kind of coming clearer. And then, and I remember like the opening riff, because there's like I don't know if it's like what the word is, dissonant or whatever. Like it's just an unusual combination. Like I remember I played for Chris at first. I remember thinking, I'm not sure if he likes that or not. Like and then but I just stuck to it. Like I liked it. And then I remember when we got to Blasting Room 2, I think I kind of noticed Bill Stevenson didn't seem to like it. I was just like, I like it. Like I like it. You know what I mean? Like
heck yeah.
By then, like Chris was into it by then. Like I think just his initial like thought was like, is this even in tune? Because like we hadn't tuned that low before either, But I was just like, I just wanted to I don't know. It was just I liked how it sounded. And
that was I think that one's in drop C. I think I was reading the music book yesterday from Sheet Happens, and I think that sounds, does that sound right? Drop C for Night Letters.
Yeah. I just wanted it to sound like a series of setbacks, It's going setback, 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 setback.
Nice. Well, I'm sure that listeners will be furious at me. I'm going to bring us back to I Spy and Fuck the Border here. So everybody's like, no, Greg, keep talking about Night Letters. No, everybody out there, we're going to talk about Fuck the Border now. So Fuck the Border started as an I Spy song. You all did not record it though officially with I Spy, correct?
No, that was it was me and James and our friend Sean. Like Rary quit I Spy after our European tour. I think it was like just a pretty like we were doing all squats with no days off for like a couple months, and I think he just had enough by the end. And Dave quit too. We're like right then, like as soon as we got back from Europe, it just kind of fell apart. Me and James were doing our thing by and still living together, and all that. We're kind of keeping it alive, but I just felt like I don't know, it was, no, but yeah, me and James were still rocking. Yeah. I think like I felt like James wanted more different kinds of influences,
Mm-hmm.
than I did. Like he was listening to all kinds of like eclectic music, which is good, but I was thinking like I was having a hard time like fitting it in. Like I could feel him wanting to change directions, but like when you're the drummer, you can't really, like it's hard to change directions if you're the drummer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like because you have to be able to say to the other person like what that is and have them interpret it. You know what I mean? Like I can listen personally, like I can listen to like Fela Kuti or something, like some African music, and be like, okay, I that's inspired me. I can go put it in like a song, like, you know what I mean, or bluegrass. Like
Right.
there's some songs of mine there, like I'm playing bluegrass, just put the same picking in a different, like the same style of picking in a completely different riff. And no one's ever going to be like, hey, that sounds like Blazing Larry,
Right. Yeah.
And, but if you're the drummer, I think it's a harder experience to do that,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I could feel that he was getting like kind of frustrated. And he was like he kept wanting like even like rap and stuff, And I was like to me, like I couldn't see how someone could do that without like ending up sounding like Korn or something,
Mm-hmm.
if they even existed. But like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I couldn't envision something that I could personally make sound good.
Right.
And then when we're in Europe, I was also noticing like our I Spy songs, like they're almost like sometimes too complicated, like there's no time where I get to relax and just, like settle into the just kind of a groove.
Sure.
And then so I was like kind of mulling over Juice Pigs wanting rap versus my need wanting to like play something simple, like there's this band from Holland, Seeing Red, like they had really, really, really simple songs, but I liked them. And like I don't know, just something like more like that. And so I had a mullen in my head. So I was like, okay, Juice Pig, like let's do this. Like I got this song, it's direct, and in the middle we'll have like kind of a more rapish part where you can do, you know what I mean? Like I gave him the start. He played totally different drums than Jord did. And I actually somewhere, which I can't find anymore, I found a version of us playing our song. And James's drums are completely different than Jord. And they're actually in the opposite beat.
Wow.
But they still sound like I was like, this is like, he did an awesome job as well,
Yeah.
Like his beat was the opposite, but it had a totally different groove. But I was like, it still sounds rad.
I can actually envision it in my head. I'm kind of going over it right now, and it's really interesting if you allow yourself to envision the drums being on the opposite beat. It's really interesting. Like it's just kind of I'm hearing it in my head. It actually works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like and then the middle I was like going with like James's rap thing in a way that I could do that I thought would be good. Like not, you know what I mean? Like when you're making a song, like you have what you want to do, and then there's like what you can make
right
sound good, like you have your dreams and then you have your reality.
Sure.
So I just remember just hitting it off, and we had this guy Sean. He was like my friend for a long time, and like before I Spy, we got him on bass, and he was super, super into being in the band too. So, and like we were back to that thing where we were like I remember, Sean jumping off his amp and stuff while we're doing that song, just nice. In the basement, just riffing and playing, and Juice Pigs all into it. Like James would be so into it, like his eyes are closed and he's just headbanging, and like he'd be jumping off his seat. Like he's just a fun guy to drum with, like if we'd play a show and there was a couch behind his drums, he'd jump off the seat onto the drums, and even if there's one person watching or nobody watching. So it was kind of it didn't work out very well for us being tight.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think our band sounded more like urgent, or like almost falling off the rock wheels, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's like it's out of control.
Yeah. At the same time, it's like some of the charm came from that, you know? Like, I listen to the records, I'm like, oh, I wish this was better. I wish this was better, you know? But like somehow, like, it was those guys, and I have the same spirit too, like, and FYP, like Todd from FYP, like, I think, like, all of us kind of had this opposite spirit that is like we don't actually give a fuck how tight this is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in retrospect, it's good to be tight, and like the feeling of power you get from like being tight, like us in Propagandy.
Right.
Like I prefer to do the work and get really good, you know?
Yeah.
Like, work the chops, you know? And then like kind of add your own fucking pizzazz later, you know? but like in I Spy, like it would be like all pizzazz. Like, we wouldn't really work out like things, you know?
Right.
Like, is all this shit hitting at the right time? I don't know. I don't give a fuck. Neither do you.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's not a way to go as you get older, or as you want to be a musician and play, you know, and have other people like go, yeah, okay, that's rad, you know? Because other people, they don't know they don't, like, they can't see you, they can only hear it. So if things aren't hitting in time, it's like the power diminishes.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like if those I Spy records were just like even like 5% tighter, like, they'd be way more powerful, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like 5% tighter and recorded better. But then sometimes I think, like, I don't know if we could have worked if we went to better studios, you know? Like, if we weren't just sitting there with Sutton and we're with a professional and they're like, do you know what you're playing? I have no idea what I'm playing, but do you know what I mean? Do you know what you're going to record? No.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think, like, if we ended up in the blasting room, like, I don't know, like, I think we would have been like just sent home defeated. Like, I suck, you suck, everyone sucks, let's quit, you know?
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you think about it like that, like, I think about like my high school and college bands, and we were a disaster. But we went in there and basically my friends just told me, Greg, play the drums as fast as you can. We will keep up and then we'll be done recording. Like, that's how we went about it.
Yeah.
But it gives it some charm too, you know. It makes those things a little special and unique, and statements in the time and place in your life and where you were at the time, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I listen to Venom or something, it's so off the rails, or Bathory, like, I just feel like the more polished stuff just can't deliver, you know. But then on the other side, like, something that's razor sharp, like fucking Razor.
Yeah.
So like I'm right in the middle. Like, I'm for all of it. Like, if I could achieve it all at once, you know,
yeah.
If I could achieve all, I would. Like, if you could have that sound that's crazy and the tightness of this, you know, I think that's where, like, I think Chris is in the same. He's like way more a guy wanting to be tight than I am, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I go along with it because, like, this is our vibe, you know. Like,
yeah.
And I practice hard. Like, I want to be tight too. Like, I want to be good. I want to be tight. I don't want to be shitty man for the rest of my life. But yeah, I don't know. It's such a fine line. Like I heard the guy Eddie Kramer, who recorded the first Kiss Alive record, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yeah, people like bag on them for re-recording some of their live stuff for the record, but he's like, it's humanly impossible to do what they do and play really well. Like, it's
right.
Physical. He just says he knows of no single person who could ever do it. So he's like that's the line I kind of have always walked in Propagandy. Like, what's the line between how hard I want to go versus can I keep this under control, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just like some shows, it's like, fuck, I didn't quite keep it under control enough. Other shows is like, fuck, nah, I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have enough of that feeling that I like. And
Yeah. Well, and you all were just coming off of 2 years of no shows, and those Winnipeg shows went off pretty darn well for having a 2-year gap in between live performances,
Yeah. I thought the first one's a novelty, so I didn't feel like I played all that well, but then kind of, I came under control the next couple.
Yeah. Night two was my favorite. I was like, that show hit real hard for me. So night two was my vote.
Probably me too. I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah. So, Fuck the Border, everybody out there listening probably knows the lyrics. Were the lyrics written basically like they are now for the I Spy version as well?
They were like the version that is that bonus.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so those were the same I Spy lyrics, I think.
Okay, great. Do you have a memory of like an inciting incident, like if you were like reading the news or something and you read something like caused you to write these lyrics? Do you remember like why you wrote about these particular lyrics?
Yeah, well, at the time I was like trading records with a lot of people and people from Mexico and stuff, and they'd always be putting in flyers and stuff, and I was learning about like the Zapatistas in Mexico and all that, and there's a lot of stuff kind of going on. And and then one of the guys I was trading records with, I can't remember what he said, but he was like, he was going to the States. He's like, I got to get out of here. Or I can't remember why, or you know what I mean? What? But I just kind of like put them, all the ideas into one kind of thing, like what could be causing all this, like, and like it's all so much based on economy and stuff, and like, in my tiny little mind, I'm thinking like, like why is it just like you can accept all the goods, you can accept, companies and that they're just can go wherever, but single people, like you can fuck someone up, but then when they have to leave, you won't accept them, it's still going on today,
Absolutely.
Like, you like be part of a war in Syria, and then, but we're not going to accept you, or like Afghanistan, especially, or Iraq,
Yeah.
Iraq, I guess. Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's just the same story. Like that's the crazy thing. It's just everything's on such a cycle. It's like it almost never gets old,
Yeah. That's what's been so crazy about your music as well, is like the things that we shouldn't even be talking about. I feel like certain things like should age out. Like propaganda lyrics from like 20-25 years ago should not be getting more relevant with each passing year. Like it blows me away,
Yeah, I find it like disappointing and disheartening, but at the same time, like we could see it coming that long ago and no one cared. Everyone's just like, you guys are a bunch of jack-offs. It's like, okay, well, I guess I am, but like, no matter what you think about me, this is coming. So fuck off.
Yeah, something else that's interesting too. So we brought up Night Letters earlier, which has an immigration theme as well, a certain story of immigration. Then we have Fuck the Border. So this is something that you've been interested in for a long time and have cared about for a long time. Do you see this as sort of like a recurring plot within your own writing that you believe in and believe should be talked about?
Yeah, and I guess it's just like I just keep coming in contact with people that I believe in, and I'm like I can't believe how they're being treated. It's just like it's more of that than like I'm trying to be cool, like fuck you, pig, fuck the border,
Right.
It's like if you look into the songs are about people, it like fuck the border is just like like a young person's way of saying it,
Yeah.
And like then as they get older, it's more like I think like Night Letters, but for some reason, even listeners like tend to gravitate, it seems, towards the easy version,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's easier to go fuck the border than like what's happening in the night letters, you know, like you can't, it's not a easy thing to say, or,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Well, and
So
here in Buffalo, I've got some friends that whose families have like work for the border agencies and things like that, and are border guards. And like, yeah, whenever my dad heard the song "Fuck the Border," it was like a big fight in our household because like this is the thing that like pays for our house and our family. You know what I mean? And we're saying
yeah,
"fuck the border." So it's
yeah,
the individual humanity behind each of the people that are featured in these songs. I mean, the power of a single story is something that I think about a lot versus like the story of like if you try to tell a story of like millions of people, it goes over people's heads because it's too much for one single person to really wrap their brain around. But if you talk about a single story, it sort of sinks in a little bit more because you can see that individual humanity, which is what I get whenever I read the lyrics to Fuck the Border, where it's like one person and it's like there's like a central character within that song.
yeah. And I think someone getting mad at it is like totally missing the point.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna read the title and think of every reason on earth why you need a border, and every reason fucking, you know, my daddy worked there and shit, you know, just like you don't, you know what I mean? You're missing the point. I think that's a lot of the things with a lot of our lyrics. Like if you're gonna sit there and read the lyrics and try to think up of every counterpoint thought ever against every sentence that's ever been uttered, you know, it's like, oh, dude, like, you know what I mean? Like, I can sit there and listen to old records where every single fucking word is stupid and offensive, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like,
Tell me about playing this song for Jord and Chris when you joined the band, and how that process of like incorporating the song into the band, because it could have just been left behind as like an unused I Spy song, but it went on to become this like iconic propaganda song. And I'm wondering what those two guys thought about this song, 20 plus years ago at this point.
I just remember me and Chris and George getting together, and yeah, and just Chris saying, you want to play Fuck the Border? And I don't know, like sometimes, you know, when like we didn't think too much about stuff, you know,
Yeah.
like even when I'm talking about like that, like Painted Thin recording before I Spy, it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's agitating me a little bit, but it's not
Right.
like I'm fucking sweating bullets. I can't stand you. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's just like, it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's just kind of happening, and you're just like, I kind of wish that wasn't happening. But same with, yeah, like that, like us playing Fuck the Border, like Chris is like, you want to, whatever, I don't know, just you want to play the song? Okay. You know what I mean? And then, like, I remember George, like, we didn't have a recording of the I Spy version or anything. And I remember George starting the drums and it being on the opposite beat, you know? And
Yeah.
just thinking, like, it's the opposite beat. That's nice. The last I thought about it, you know?
Nice.
Or I don't even think I thought that. I just remember thinking, I think that's different than the way James played it. Oh well, I guess we'll go on. I don't care.
Did any other I Spy riffs or anything that were unused get brought over to any of your other songs for Empires, or is that the only one?
Yeah. Although I Spy never like touched it, but it was gonna be that Idle Homes for whatever. But it had totally different words, and I actually wish I went with the other words because they were it was like the other words were about standing there. Like I remember we were like 100 miles from like the Bosnian War and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and we just like we were also at Dachau earlier, the concentration camp, like earlier in the week or something.
Yeah,
just getting all these fucking heavy thoughts over there, you know.
Yeah,
and yeah, kind of the words were like more geared towards that originally. And I kind of like, I just couldn't piece it together. And then, and then I kind of just went with a different idea, but I remember like the other words were like darker and heavier, you know, like kind of more personally in a way too, which is like, I think that song, like if the lyrics had come all across a little more personal, like the song would be at a different level. You know what I mean? Like I really like the song, but it's like I think it just slightly falls short of like grabbing people the way that I think it could have, you know.
Gotcha.
Like it's like almost like a secondary song, whereas like it could have been like moved itself up like at least 10 Spotify listens.
Yeah, nice. That makes a lot of sense. I thought about that a lot, about what the reissue of Empires did for my opinion of certain songs. And I've said this on the podcast elsewhere, but like to me, the songs that benefited the most from the reissue are the ones that are more challenging to love. Like everybody's going to love Back to the Motor League. Everybody's going to love Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. Everybody's going to love Purina Hall of Fame, no matter what. But the ones that really jumped out at me for the reissue were the ones that were like, with Friends Like These, Who the Fuck Needs COINTELPRO?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Natural Disasters. All like those are the ones that really jumped out at me as being the ones like, wow, I liked this song before, but I love it now with the new sound. Like that's what that reissue did for me, is it made the songs that like are harder to love because they're more challenging to listen to. It made those a lot more obviously lovable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, I found the same thing when I heard it. Yeah, just like, like for some unknown reason, like the real feel of the songs coming through better. Yeah,
man, I tell you what, COINTELPRO, I cannot believe how much that song benefited from that reissue. Like it is mind-blowingly good now. I've always liked it, but like now I like love it.
I that particular song, I remember when we got home from recording, sitting at my like stereo. You know, when you're in a studio or something, you're never quite sure what it really sounds like till you get home.
Yeah, because everything in the studio is so nice. All the gear is perfect.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like when you're recording an I Spy record and you're like, fuck, this sounds like fucking Metallica. You know, and then you get home and you're like, holy fuck, Metallica.
Yeah.
And then like I literally remember, like I say that as an example, but I literally remember thinking that, like, fuck, I think this is gonna sound like as good as a Metallica record. Yeah. And then like later, nope, it certainly doesn't. And then it's crazy. So I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
Tell me about
COINTELPRO. Yeah, that's the best jump. Yeah,
it is. It's unbelievable. Like when the first time I heard it, I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning because I couldn't sleep the day that the reissue came out, and I came downstairs, put on my headphones, put it on, and I was like, this sounds amazing. And then COINTELPRO came on, and I was like, whoa, I understand everything now. This is amazing.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm paying, like over time, like people are always wondering, like, you know, like, I love that record, I don't know why they don't like it, you know, or as much. But like they don't really know that like we're sitting in the room knowing what was there. Yeah. And then like, you know what I mean? Like we're coming from the opposite, where we like know like, fuck, this is deadly. And then it kind of like somehow like fishtails just a little out of our control, or out of, you know, maybe everyone, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, just, and then the final thing you get is like, fuck, we kind of blew it, you know? But you know, it's all there still. And that's why, like, you can see in Chris's mind, he's just like, over the years, like we gotta somehow get this back, you know? Like he couldn't like mentally like let go, you know? And it like, you know, no one in the crowd or fucking the world cares. But like, if you are the band, and you know there was something there, and you're just like, it's hard to let go for like we're all sort of perfectionists, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like I kind of joke about fucking being, you know, like not caring, but I actually do care a lot, you know?
Yeah. I mean, of course. And the reissue has these amazing bonus tracks for COINTELPRO, for Fuck the Border. And, you know, a notable difference on the demo version is the fast singing in Fuck the Border instead of the iconic fuck the border, like where it's like you can totally hear it's fuck the border, fuck the border, fuck the border. It's way faster. It's like a lot like machine gun style. And, you know, I'm wondering what this demo version and then how that change in the vocal delivery came about for you. And because obviously it worked out in the end.
Yeah. Well, I think like the initial thought, and I can't remember how fast the I Spy version is, but in Propaganda, we tend to keep just ramping the speed up over.
Yeah.
You know, but I remember like the initial impulse was like just to go like fuck the border. You know what I mean? Like just like fuck you, fuck you, like in that kind of succession, you know?
Yeah.
And like I don't know how it was. Like it was that speed in I Spy, but I don't know. Like I think it was just me doing it. Like you know, and then when I got in Propaganda, it's me and Chris doing it. I think it became more of a chant, which is good, you know, like but maybe like as it becomes a chant, you know, it starts to sound more like fuck the border, fuck the border, fuck the border. And as you lose like your own personal, like somehow along the way, I lost the bite of the initial impulse, you know, or something, like something happened. Then when we got to it, like I was just like, me and Chris were trying to do it in for real, you know, with Ryan sitting there recording, and like we just couldn't like do it that good. And I think it was Ryan that said like, why don't you like do it like half the speed, you know? I think it was him that said that, but I'm not sure. It was either him or Chris, because it wasn't me, I know that. And then it was one of those two guys said that, and then and then we just did it, and we're like, okay, that is way more powerful, you know? Amazing. And I took it, like I remember taking it that night, like Ryan at the end of the day would make you a little tape, you know? Chris and Jordan went somewhere, and I just stayed back at the studio. I remember just listening to it on the tape deck, you know, like, fucking this rips.
Yeah.
You know? And like, especially when you've never heard it really, well, I guess we heard it recorded, but like to just hear it recorded real, you know, and I really like listening to cassette tapes. I kind of like I guess I'm just used to it from when I was a kid, you know, just the way that it compresses into like not a digital compression, but just has this sound. Like I just press it. It's just like, it reminded me of listening to tapes that I like when I was a kid and be like, fuck, I'd be proud of this, you know?
Yeah. You know, a random question I have, those Empire songs for you are particularly vocally abrasive. Like there isn't like a Negretto on there. Like your melodic stuff came later on, like Bringer of Greater Things. Did you just completely blow your voice out nonstop in the studio on those Empires recordings?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think after Empires, after singing March of the Crabs, that was the last one. Yeah, I think my voice was never the same after.
Wow.
Like, ever.
Because it's wild. Like whenever I heard those songs as a fan when I was 19 years old, when that record came out, or 18 or whatever I was just like, wow, I can't believe people can actually do this. Because I was like, there's no way, like my voice would be gone in 8 seconds. Like it would take me under 10 seconds and I wouldn't be able to talk. So
the real problem I realized later that caused me the problem is that like my actual vocal range is not high, you know? And so I'm pushing like, you know, like Barney from Napalm Death, like he can do it and he still do it. He does it every note every day, but he hasn't destroyed his voice because it's like it's in his range.
Right.
You know? So I was yelling like that hard, but out of my range.
Yeah.
Like just like 100% compressed. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I wasn't going hard unless I could feel like fucking my head exploding, and you know what I mean? Like like I didn't know. Like I think that's the feeling that I was like, you know what I mean? Like this is fucking. But now it's like I don't really enjoy that feeling, or you know what I mean? Like I like the feeling of not pain, you know what I mean? Like to get,
of course.
So
I mean, Barney from Napalm Death is a legend, and the fact that he can that he can do it, because I just saw them live. I mean, Barney's like 53 years old and just completely slays live still. Like he's perfect, and I just can't believe it. But because he's learned how to do it properly in a way that fits within what his natural speaking and singing range is.
Yeah. To me, he's like a 1 in a trillion person. Like, like when I hear him, to me, it's the heaviest recorded voice of all time. Like, yes. I can't think of anything that is heavier. Like when he sings those songs, like, especially if you've done it, you've tried to do it yourself, and
like
you know what it takes to deliver that impact every sentence he sang. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't tire, it doesn't falter. Like, I think I've seen him like a bunch of times. I've only heard like one line, like, kind of delivered less than half. You know what I mean? Like, like literally one line. And I don't know, like, anybody who's recorded heavy music or played live, like, has to realize, like, what a feat that is.
Yeah. And then he talks in between songs, and it's like you're being invited to go have, like, afternoon tea. And he sounds like he should be on the BBC reading the news. But then whenever he talks between songs, he says awesome stuff about people and his worldviews. And you're like, you're the coolest dude of all time, Barney. I just think he's amazing.
Yeah, I do too. I could not say enough about what I think of that guy. And
he's awesome.
And Napalm,
Well, if you've never listened to Napalm Death, everybody go listen to them because they're amazing.
Yeah.
So amazing. Speaking of the new reissue, so I was listening to this earlier, and I'm sure you've maybe noticed this by now, but a notable difference in the new version is that the line "she'll take what's hers" is not in the Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes reissue version. It's like a different vocal take. And so this was something that excited me. It's like, oh my gosh, a different vocal take was used by Jason Livermore for the new reissue version. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on notable differences in any, like, this song, other songs, anything like that, because some alternative stuff made it into the new version.
Yeah, that's the only one I recognize as different, like, there could be stuff everywhere. Like literally, I don't, I haven't listened to actually Empires for a year, you know what I mean? Like, I don't sit around and listen to our records.
Right.
Really. Like, I think it's a weird mindset you get yourself into, maybe. Like, sometimes, like, obviously I have to play, like, you don't want to burn them out, right? Like, when you want to go on tour, you want to be like, okay, I still like this,
Yeah.
And like it's fun to like every now and then, when I'm practicing a song, like, I'll keep letting it run, and I'll be like, oh fuck, this is pretty rad, but like I, you know what I'm saying, just like, you're not gonna sit around and listen to your own band fucking day after day. And,
of course.
Yeah, and then that was the original version from like I Spy to Us with Propaganda, was that right now.
Yeah.
And then I think for some reason I thought like maybe could have some, like, just something a little more substance to the line,
Mm-hmm.
But then when I heard it back again, I was just like, yeah, I think that sounds better.
Cool. So you're definitely okay with the omission of that, like, one particular lyric in there?
Yeah, I was just like, I think Jason or something accidentally put it up like that. I was just like, yeah, it just seems to flow better. I remembered it. It's not like I'd forgotten the line,
sure.
Like, I've always known it's there. I think I've done it that way a few times live, even just for my own enjoyment or something, but.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just curious about that, because, like, I thought that was just such an interesting little change, because you hear something, that's the best part about this reissue, is you hear something the same way for so many years, so many times, and then you hear it in a new way, and like the little changes here and there, it's just really cool. Like, everybody was freaking out about like the drumsticks getting set down at the end of Natural Disasters, I think it was, like, the song ends, and like Jason left in like George setting down his sticks on the new reissue, and people were like, oh my gosh, you hear George put his sticks down. And like we were just nerding out about it tremendously, of all the little differences that we were noticing in like Instagram and stuff. So we get supremely nerdy about it over here at the podcast.
Yeah, cool. I probably heard it, but I probably didn't realize or didn't remember that I couldn't hear that in the other version, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that stuff too, though, you know?
Yeah,
like
Jason
SNFU does a good job of keeping that stuff in on their records.
Nice.
You know?
Yeah, Jason put in some cool stuff. It's just an incredible piece of work. And whenever I interviewed him for the podcast, he's like, it sounds like a different record. You're going to love it. And I'm like, awesome. And it worked out.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at how I think it's genuinely just better, which is why I think everyone agrees, you know?
Yeah.
Like sometimes the problem would be like old bands take their old records and that, but then they try to modernize them, you know, and compress them and, you know, add all this extra tones and, you know what I mean? Just this fake shit, like let's reamp the thing, you know, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I think it just like, it kind of backtracks, you know, because you're like, they actually take away the life and rawness of it and replace it with something more sterile.
Yeah.
Whereas I almost feel like we reverse did that, you know, like what you're getting is more natural to the reality of what it was, you know.
That's so well said. And I mean, when Chris did a little listening party sort of video on his Patreon where he like filmed himself listening to it, and it was really good, but like he talked about so it was really cool to watch him enjoy it, but so many people have also said that this is the reissue that Jord deserved, because Chris said he's like, whenever I hear this version, I hear Jord, and Chris and Jord have been playing together for so many years now. It's like, this is what I recognize as Jord's drumming. And so everybody agrees that that Jord, like, even if you only updated the drums on this reissue, that Jord deserved this.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like that was my biggest disappointment. That's actually what I was trying to say earlier. When I got home and heard it on my stereo and couldn't hear like that Jordness. Yeah. You know, coming through here and there. Like, yeah, that was the biggest disappointment. I was just like, shit.
Yeah. Is Fuck the Border a given when the band writes set lists? Do you always play this one?
Oh, it seems so. I think we've only not played it like once or twice. Like, yeah, so I don't even, it never even occurred to me that we always play it until a couple of years ago. It's just like, I don't think we've ever,
Nice.
Yeah, I don't even, I just, you know, people have their marker and just start writing. It's just like, it's always on the list. So, okay.
Well, Todd, I only really have one more question for you. Like I said earlier, this is sort of a theme that comes up throughout your work throughout the years. And, you know, I know that you've done a little bit of work in the community as far as, you know, you working, being engaged with the refugee community in Winnipeg and around the area where you live. And I'm wondering if you can just like tell people what kind of work you've also done within like the community in Winnipeg to address some of the issues that you tend to sing about a lot within your tunes.
Yeah, I guess I was volunteering at this place called the Welcome Place for a long time, and then just through doing that, I got a job at Need Center with kids downtown, and it was awesome. I'm still friends with a lot of the kids. I haven't been around there for a while. Like I went on tour, and then you know what I mean. You just kind of come back, and like it's all different kids and stuff, you know, and you're kind of like, oh, all my buddies are gone, you know, that kind of shit. Yeah, just whatever, you know.
I mean, getting out into the world and making one's immediate surroundings a little better, I feel like that is something that so many of us could really benefit from by building relationships and trying to make our immediate surroundings just a little bit better instead of worrying about so many things out in the greater world that we have no control over. Working at the hyper local is a way that everybody can make an immediate impact. And that's kind of what I get from you on a song like these, where you're hearing these stories and you're doing some kind of local work and you're actually seeking to like work in like a hyper local way in order to make what you can see around you just a little better, and then kind of conveying those messages via music. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I kind of I guess I started that because I'd take the bus all the time, you know, so I'd see like people who are obviously new to Canada having a hard time like even like navigating the getting on the bus.
Yeah.
I remember, or it's probably not a lot, but you know what I mean? Like I have a couple, or at least one specific instance, like where I was sitting there and like kind of like profoundly affected me. Like when I realized like, you know, like people are coming here like with so different knowledge of their general day-to-day life that this is like coming to Winnipeg's completely different, especially when it's so cold.
Yeah.
You know, like people like I can't even imagine how it must feel for people to come to such a cold place from a warm place. Like I've seen kids like start running and just like fall on the ground thinking they've frozen their lungs, like, and they're gonna die and suffocate, you know?
Yeah.
Like, cause like where else do you run and just your lungs can't even handle it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like literally seeing kids like they're drowning in the sea, flipping out, and you're just like, dude, your lungs will warm up in a second. Like, you know, like just that kind of experience, like it just, I don't know. It's just like you either are the type of person who likes other, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You either like other people and want to help, or you're a dick that fucking doesn't. And it almost seems like that's the way, you know, you choose to be a dick or you don't. Like, I don't really know what else there is. Like,
Well, that is perfect. That is a perfect place to stop. But Todd, thank you so much for giving me this time to talk so much about I Spy and the history of that band, joining Propaganda and bringing new material over, and then so much detail about today's Empires, tomorrow's Ashes, and the reissue process, and all these great stories. I'm just super thrilled that we were able to hang out today. It just kind of made my Friday.
turn on this, right? Yeah.
Fuck the Border, one of the best songs ever. Half of me just wanted to call in and yell the entire goddamn song into the phone, but I'm not going to do that. I'll spare everyone. But Todd sounds madder in this song than the maddest person ever in the history of humanity has ever sounded, and it's the greatest. Fuck the Border.
Okay, so we are back. That was a wonderful, I guess, 70 minutes with Todd Kowalski. It's just a thrill. It's an honor. Thank you so much, Todd, for coming on, talking about I Spy, the origin of the song, the demo version, the studio version, the Empire's reissue. Todd, it's always a pleasure. And don't forget that if you use that I Spy 20 at checkout at Recess Records store, you can get a discount on that I Spy 10-inch and a lot of other great music and stuff as well. And also coming back in from that interview with Todd, you all heard a cover version of Fuck the Border. That was performed by Adam Barney, who is on Hops Records, which is a small DIY label on the East Coast of England. And you can download Barney's version at hopsrecords.bandcamp.com for free. And it's also included as a track on the Better Late Than Forever compilation at Hops Records. So thank you so much to Barney. Everybody go check out Hops Records and check out that track, and the rest of the compilation is really good as well. So Keith, what do you say we start chatting about music on this straight up 4/4 banger we got going here?
Yeah, right on, Greg. I'll share a couple of thoughts I have about guitar. And what's really great about this song is, though I guess I say this a lot, the relatively straightforward composition and performance. I mean, you have a number of power chords with a few different riffs, but they're each played in a variety of ways that make the guitar sound far more varied than it is if you actually like watch it play, or if you look at the tablature. You know, there are pauses thrown in. There's a really excellent use of palm muting. There are pick slides. So that variation takes a pretty straightforward hardcore punk song and makes it pretty complex, I think. And although it has its roots as an I Spy track, I think this totally fits within the transitional era of Propagandy sound. And I love that it's track 2. Like, Mate Ka is a clear indicator in the band's evolving style, like more melodic and thrashy. They're really powerful vocals that are in a way more metal than punk. And then Todd comes right afterward with a just far more aggressive hardcore sound that had to surprise the listeners who had been on board since How to Clean Everything and Less Talk More Rock.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And, you know, my favorite thing about this song on guitar, you mentioned the pick slides. Those are my favorite things.
They're huge.
They're so great. They're my favorite parts about this song. And the bridge section from 57 seconds to 1:09 under It's About Fucking Time to Treat People with Respect. It's our culture and consumption that make our life unbearable. All of that, it has those, and all it is the first fret on every string just barred straight down. So whenever they're just hitting that big ringing sound, it's just the first fret barred, and then it goes, and all it is Chris is just dragging his hand up the guitar, barred all the way on all 6 strings, just going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to the 6th fret. It's just genius. He just goes, and that's my favorite part, is when he drags it up from the 1st to the 6th fret, 1 fret at a time. And, you know, I say this a lot, but this song is pretty accessible to people who are not amazing at guitar. A lot of Propagandy's stuff is completely inaccessible to me, but I looked at the tablature from the Sheet Happens book, which is brand new, out recently from Sheet Happens, which are friends of the podcast as well. Luke and Tim from Protest the Hero are both involved over there, and they do great work. And so I strapped on an acoustic guitar and I ripped on it a little bit, and here's what I came up with. So yeah, it's not an inaccessible tune for folks who might want to just bust out the guitar on a Friday night and just mess around a little bit. So that's what I love about the song on the guitar for this one. But for bass, I love just those big open E string hits at the very beginning. I just love that ball. And I also love when the bass riff comes in. It is just iconic when that bass kicks in with that opening riff. And, the band has modified that intro a little bit live. They just come in right on that intro riff now. They don't do the ringing for like the first 15 seconds when they perform it live. Just George just comes in and Todd just goes boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. So it just comes right in on that riff live these days, which is pretty cool because it just puts you right in the middle of the action. But I also love how Todd sort of hits like a power chord bass riff under the chorus chant to give it like a really huge sound on the bass. So that's kind of what my thoughts are on that part.
Well, Greg, iconic is a perfect word to describe that bass riff at the beginning. It's almost like every time I hear it in my headphones or on the stereo, that I'm hearing it live, like, because I think Propaganda have played this live every single time I've seen them.
Yeah.
So it's one that I definitely associate with either watching a YouTube concert of theirs or seeing them in person in Chicago. That riff is in fact iconic. And after that, like the bass that comes in after those resonating power chords, it's huge. And on the remastered version, the bass is thick, but it's clear, it's deep, it's growly. It really sounds awesome.
It really benefited. The bass on this record benefited so much from that remaster. The drums and the bass to me are the two things that benefited the most on the remaster. And so I'm really glad that the remaster happened, the remix remaster. There's so much that happened that was changed. And there are some differences in the record too. Like discerning listeners have picked up that they may have used a different guitar take or a different vocal take on some parts of the record. And Fuck the Border, like Todd and I talked about, does have a different vocal take that was used by Jason Livermore at the end of the song. So the version that you hear on the 2001 version and the 2021 version have a vocal difference at the very end of the song, which Todd and I chatted about earlier. But on the drums of this song, there's really only 1:17 of drums in this song, because the first 15 seconds are basically just like ringing cymbal intro. But there's fabulous China cymbal hits on this song. There's fabulous toms on this song.
Yes.
My favorite part of the song on the drums is the bridge at 57. I just love that when the drums are basically just, driving the song under Todd singing, "It's about time to treat people with respect. It's our culture of consumption to make our life unbearable." I love the drums under that part. And I went downstairs and tried to play it and I couldn't really figure it out. So I flopped big time.
Yeah, the rumbling and rolling toms right before that first pick slide really helped build the energy and the anticipation toward like the momentum that Todd builds into the song. I really like the offset splashes that come just after you'd expect them to hit, maybe after it or at the end of a measure. The drums mirror the guitars in that there are like a few main ideas and they're repeated, but with a lot of variation thrown in.
Yeah.
And George sounds just so good on the remastered version too. Like the drums aren't flat or artificial sounding. They're bright, they're crisp, they're powerful. I shared with you before, Greg, that I've been waiting to listen to the remastered version to really to have my attention in it. So I'm glad I didn't put it on while doing chores or grading when I wouldn't really be able to pick out those details and changes and like the evolution of the album in a way. And hearing it for the first time with just my focused attention, I don't know. I'm glad I waited. I'm glad I delayed my gratification there.
I love that you mentioned how the drums and the guitars sort of speak to each other a little bit. Like I'm thinking about that, da, 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 fuck this country. You know what I mean? Where it's got that like little machine gun, those little blasts, da, 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 right there on that part. I love that part. The way that Jord and Chris sync up so well. And, we have to talk a little bit about the alternate vocal take. Todd and I talked about it, but when it was an I Spy song, the vocals in the chorus were delivered differently, and they're much more understandable now for me. I'm so glad that Todd and Ryan Green, or whoever it was that was involved in making that decision to change up the chorus. Todd, I think he credited Ryan Green for having that idea of singing the vocals at half the speed that they were singing it. And it was just an instantaneous difference. But, there's an early 1996 recording of Propagandy playing this song live. And I wanted to share it here because this is, as far as I can tell, the earliest performance of this song with Todd and the band that is documented on recording. So here is Propagandy playing Fuck the Border in 1996 with the alternate vocal style in the chorus.
And as he tunes, I'll tell you the title of it. It's called Fuck the Border. And it's not so much just about us, people like us crossing the border to get down to the States to see a show. It's about people in other parts of the world who try and cross borders to go to a place that's safer, and how people stay in a country like ours react against them, saying that all our problems are because of immigrants coming here, and that's just bullshit. That's obvious bullshit handed down from capitalist institutions to make sure we keep divided and we don't unionize and stand up together against a system that's killing us. So, not to put words in Todd's mouth, but that's what it's about.
Yep.
Okay. For sure.
Considering I have this 5,000 pound weight on my mic cord, I'll have this bit of slack here. So none of you get in the way of this bit of slack of this cord, you see? Don't go right here.
It's quiet in here. It's all right. No, it's all right. It's all right.
So sorry for making you do this twice if you were here twice. But I gotta hear it, so you gotta hear it.
All right. So I'm really glad that, that I was able to find that early live recording. I'm glad that exists. And I'm really glad the band put the demo version on the reissue as well. That's just such an awesome and timely surprise for us to make this episode just a little bit more special. So let's get into the lyrics. What do you think here, Keith?
All right, Greg. The first part we're going to break down says, a friend of mine dropped me a line. It said, man, I got to run to the USA. I got no money, got no job. She skipped out of Mexico to stay alive.
Yeah. If I think about this 2001 as being the context of this record's release, I immediately think of the years surrounding the implementation of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And, the negative effects of NAFTA are extremely easy to behold if you look for sources that depict it from the point of view of how it impacted people in Mexico, specifically working in agricultural sectors. So for anybody who doesn't quite know, NAFTA was an agreement signed by Canada, Mexico, and the US that created a trilateral trade bloc in North America. And the agreement was implemented in January of 1994 and superseded the 1988 Canada-United States Free Trade Agreement. And NAFTA was replaced recently by the USMCA, which was implemented in 2020 and is sometimes referred to as NAFTA 2.0 because of how much it carries over from the original NAFTA. Anyway, so I just wanted to show some stats about the impact of NAFTA and why it relates to the content within the song. And I found a study from the Institute of Agriculture and Trade Policy, which found, quote, that when NAFTA was being renegotiated or negotiated, 3 million producers or 40% of all Mexicans working in agriculture were cultivating corn. Mexico's corn producers were hit hardest by NAFTA. Mexico's borders opened 10 years ahead of schedule to allow cheaper imports of corn and beans from the US and Canada. And as a result, small, poor farmers who produced for the local markets were forced to compete with cheaper imports. For those that did not lose their jobs, monthly income for self-employed farmers fell from 1,959 pesos a month on average in 1991 to about 228 pesos a month in 2003.
Oh, wow.
So 228 pesos is about $20, and 1,950 pesos is about 190 or about $200, depending on the conversion rate for money. And so usually it's about $1 gets you about 10 pesos. So it's about 10 to 1 for the conversion. So we see a massive decline in wages for farmers living in Mexico pretty much immediately after the creation of NAFTA.
Yeah, Greg, I just want to point out there's like a tragic irony there in the ability of American agribusiness to outproduce and undercut farmers in Mexico, many of whom are indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
And given that corn was invented from a form of wild grass and cultivated by native peoples, now being outsold and put out of business by American corporations. That's such an unbelievable irony there.
Yeah, well, and so this song is very gendered, right? It talks about a woman,
right,
in the lyrics. So I dug a little bit more into gender as well, and I found that post NAFTA, poverty increased by 5% in female-headed households. But quality of life dropped dramatically in Mexico for huge swaths of the population. And there was a 50% decline in basic goods such as food, clothing, health, education, and housing that Mexican people in the population could afford to buy between 1990 and 2000. So as far as job creation goes, NAFTA created 5.3 million jobs, both in the formal and informal sectors. But this study that I was reading uncovered that approximately 36% of those jobs are created in the informal sector, where workers receive no benefits. They're not entitled to vacation pay or overtime, and routinely have no contracts. So many of the women in a post-NAFTA Mexico who entered the informal sector were selling food on the streets. And then the market became flooded because of the import of American goods. And so wages went down in the area considerably. Remaining jobs were created in the formal sector, primarily in manufacturing. But women, for the most part, went to maquilas. And while these jobs provided some autonomy for women, many of the jobs were very low wage, very precarious, difficult, and dangerous working conditions. And, the jobs did not necessarily enable many female-led households to climb out of poverty, essentially. So it was just a really hard post NAFTA situation with regards to, women-led households and many farmers and local farmers and small farmers being run out of business. So there's also the challenge of, later on, China enters the market as far as like producing goods as well. And China assembly line workers were getting paid way less than workers in Mexico who were producing goods that were going to the US. So when, a lot of our manufacturing started happening in China as well, things in Mexico got even bleaker. So it's just a massive spiral. But about 1.3 million agricultural jobs were lost in Mexico because of NAFTA. So 1 million men and 300,000 agriculture and 300,000 women lost their jobs in Mexico. And the jobs were small. They were on subsistence farming. And so there is a massive rise in unemployment, which leads to an incredible increase in immigration to the US, which creates the thing that we all see today, where people on talk shows and talk news or whatever talk about quote unquote crisis of immigration. So it's a really, really, you really have to like dig back into the story of all of these extremely complex like trade deals and everything to understand why we see the world that we do today. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
Well, Greg, I'm really glad that you brought up women in the gendered language in Fuck the Border, because even before, when I first bought this album and I had no idea what NAFTA was, despite how much Rage Against the Machine might have been talking about it.
Yeah.
And that would have been my only other connection point. I always thought that women were an important focal point in the lyrics. So highlighting those statistics behind perhaps the intentional use of a gendered language and a female protagonist here, I think helps maybe explain why Todd decided to be that specific with his lyrics. And, I touched a bit already, mentioned the impact or the somewhat historical nature of corn being developed by indigenous people. And I want to say that as a reminder, we did talk a little bit about NAFTA during the state lottery lyric discussion back in episode 63. I want to add a little bit more about what you already shared about Mexico, though, from the perspective and impact on indigenous people. So going a little further back in history, there were land reforms passed after the Mexican Revolution in the early 20th century. It created a system of collective land that placed more than 50% of Mexican land in the hand of peasants and in the hands of indigenous peoples. And the lands and territories are home to incredibly rich, immense biodiversity and natural wealth through water and minerals and gas, which then became the target of government and corporate interests not long after. So on top of those economic consequences, Greg, in 1992, Mexico revised its constitution to weaken those protections that communities have under the communal property system, including abolishing this form of collective land. So in addition to weakening those land protections, the introduction of NAFTA left millions of people displaced and forced them to emigrate to cities to work in maquilas, the factories you mentioned, run by the US companies in Mexico, to take advantage of cheap labor and lax regulations under NAFTA, or they moved to the US to try to find work, often under extremely exploitive conditions.
Isn't it crazy that we're still only talking about like the first line in the song?
Right.
Like it's crazy. Like the amount of things that I dug into based on the first line is insane. And I have even more. The New York Times did a dialogue series discussing the consequences of NAFTA, where they got a bunch of people from like slightly different political, viewpoints to write short blurbs about NAFTA in 2013. as a sort of like commemorative, like looking back at it, like whenever the Trans-Pacific Partnership was being discussed under the Obama presidency in 2013, there was like this reflection that New York Times did about NAFTA itself. And one editorial by an economist named Dean Baker stood out to me for how it portrayed corporate interests. So check this out. Baker writes, one of the main purposes of the agreement was to make U.S. firms feel confident that they could locate operations in Mexico without having to fear that their factories could be nationalized or that Mexico would impose restrictions on repatriating profits. This encouraged firms to take advantage of lower cost labor in Mexico, and many did. This can produce economic gains. They just don't go to ordinary workers. The lower cost of labor translates to some extent into lower prices and to some extent into higher corporate profits. The latter might be good news for shareholders and top management, but is not beneficial to most workers. Lower prices are helpful to workers as consumers, but are not likely to offset the impact on wages. To see this point, imagine that NAFTA was about reducing the wages of doctors by eliminating the barriers that made it difficult for Mexican school children to train to U.S. standards and practice medicine in the U.S. So that passage from Baker about corporate interests and profit margins and where it goes and who benefits and who does not speaks exactly to the quote that Propaganda has on their website. And so that to me is like a direct link back to what the band writes about on that passage that they wrote. So often stories are told of how certain policies will benefit ordinary people. And so often that is shown to just be like a shady ruse to get us to go along with these decisions, when all the while it's just sneaky and underhanded ways to further enrich the already ultra rich. So it's so obvious how the world works, and it will never stop, making me sad to have to relearn that same lesson over and over and over, to constantly be disappointed whenever you dig into stuff like this and realize how the world is set up and who it's set up for.
Yeah, Greg, geez, that really encapsulates the short write-up that you shared from the album's liner notes and from the website on the intention and the purpose behind the lyrics of Fuck the Border, the ability of governments and corporations to traverse borders, but not human beings. You know, thinking in addition to the rolling back of the Constitution and environmental protections, I read a quote from Alberto Gomez from the International Peasants Movement Via Campesina, who said that 80% of the Constitution has been modified. And this isn't the Constitution from the Revolution that was about individual and collective rights. And then he went on to argue that the Constitution shifted its focus from individual and collective rights to corporate rights. And zooming out a little bit more to assess the impacts of NAFTA, I also read about how the neoliberal policies strengthened military forces, police, and paramilitaries, and it increased illegal detentions, violence, and systematic human rights violation, including corruption in the law enforcement and justice system, and state violence where police and military are involved in killings, torture, and disappearances. And one just example was a mass kidnapping in 2014 when 7 students were murdered and 43 students from a rural teachers college were forcibly abducted and then disappeared in Iguala, Mexico.
Oh, God.
Most of the students were indigenous peoples who had organized to defend their rights in their communities. And the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights issued a report revealing that federal police played an active role in the abductions and the disappearances. So this all translates to a corporatized version of colonialism and mercantilism. But rather than just home countries establishing colonies, extensions of themselves to produce goods of value, it's corporations reaping the economic benefits of resource extraction or economic dominance by flooding markets with cheap goods. I found something else in the American University International Law Review, an article called Indigenous Peoples, Indigenous Farmers, NAFTA's Threat to Mexico, Mexican teosinte farmers, and what can be done about it. And the author writes, from a purely economic perspective, it is as illogical to grow corn in Mexico as twice the world price and 1/3 the yield per acre of the United States, as it is to try to grow bananas in Canada. The indigenous peoples, however, do not focus on the macroeconomics of issues pertaining to the perpetuation or destruction of a particular lifestyle. They instead focus on maintaining their centuries old, time honored traditions passed from generation to generation. However, the question remains, how does one bring money to the impoverished villages without trampling a rural culture built on the ruins of the ancient Mayan civilization? And Professor Robert Porter, who is a former president of the Seneca Nation, warns of what he calls auto-colonization, the process by which indigenous peoples, because of their inability to possess, retain, or maintain memories of the colonization process, seek resolutions of their colonization-induced problems in a way that promotes the colonizing nation's agenda rather than remedies remedies or effects. So these issues we're talking about here can be traced across centuries of history, colonialism, imperialism, and the rise of corporate power. It's not just someone saying no borders. I mean, this is so much bigger than just a border itself.
Exactly. And the simplification of the way that it's discussed in the media today, it totally omits all of these facts from people who are quote unquote watching the news. So we don't know about any of this stuff whenever the news and things like this are paraded in front of our stupid eyeballs every single day. And it just is, it's so troubling how little we know about this stuff and how fast we are to judge. So all that said, let's get to the second lyric. You've got a problem with her living here, but what did you do to help her before she fucking came? What did the country do? What did the people do? And I love I love the character here. So in 2018, Pew Research did a polling of people in countries around the world to find out if immigrants were a strength or a burden. And the US, Canada, UK, France, Germany, Spain, Sweden, Japan, and Australia all reported a decent majority showing that immigrants could be a strength to the nation. The Netherlands was like 50-50. So like that was the cutoff about being a strength. And in 2017, the US had more than 44 million foreign-born people residing within the country. But this still doesn't mean much in a country where we detain people through ruthless border procedures and policies when people are simply trying to do their best to survive and earn money, oftentimes after their own livelihood was destroyed by the policies of the very country they are now trying to enter. We all remember the videos, the detention centers of the US border, the constant media obsession with caravans of people, and the framing of people as invaders. It's like really sickening and so dehumanizing. And like, it's really troubling because people who are like, yeah, they're invaders. Many have likely never been anywhere near a border in their lives. Like I heard people who have literally never been outside of the Midwest or to Florida talking about borders like they were some kind of like geopolitical expert. And every time I was like, yeah, I lived in Mexico for like a year and a half. Like I know a lot of these, I've met these people. Like I have made many friends. I learned a lot, and I got out of my little bubble to see what life is like on the other side of that border. So, exceptions do exist due to outsourcing of American corporations to countries with cheaper labor standards. So I get that people have personalized experiences of losing their own job where their job went to other places in the world. But there's so much knee-jerk reacting to extremely researched talking points on cable news that is totally designed to like elicit a highly emotional reaction to viewers to keep them addicted to watching that particular channel, so that the advertising dollars keep flowing. They're not trying to inform us. They're trying to addict us via rage so that they can keep making money off of us. Like, that's what I'm blown away that people don't see that this is happening to them. So what doesn't happen is encouraging people to find out about the specific life circumstances that led to something like a migrant caravan existing in the first place, and seeing what can be done to make migrant people's lives better. So no, they don't do that, but they sure as heck continue to eat strawberries and industrial slaughterhouse meat, which is they're benefiting from the labor of the very people that they are vilifying so readily that they see on their televisions.
Right. Yeah, Greg. And the focus here on accountability, responsibility, and neglect, that really hits hard. And I think it cuts both ways, challenging the people who say the bumper sticker phrases, things you've alluded to, like "we're full up" or
God,
my family came here illegally. This sort of responses to people hoping to provide better for themselves and their families. So not only challenging them to ask what they've done, but also the people who maybe would say they do support immigrants and refugees, and not only do nothing to actively help those in need, but actually make conditions worse by the politicians they elect or the companies they support, or like you suggested, the products they buy, the resorts they visit if they've traveled elsewhere, and things are actually harmful to communities. Just this week I read an article. It was shared on NPR about a indigenous community of about 10,000 people in Mexico. Comachuan, I think is how you it's not how you pronounce it. I'll say that clearly, but it's Comachuen, if as close as I can get to pronouncing it. That it survives solely from the money sent home by migrants working in the United States. And the article from NPR goes on that the money known as remittances has kept families fed after the collapse of the local woodworking industry. The money has allowed their families to remain in that community rather than move to other parts of Mexico for work. That, and the fact that kids spend much of the year with their mothers and their grandparents, has helped preserve the local indigenous language for almost everyone in the town. It was such an uplifting, endearing, and humbling story.
That's beautiful.
And it demonstrates, I think, the motivation and the necessity of immigration and migrant work that is so often vilified in the US. And, looking at just other research, statistics, and reports, the ADL put out a report called Mainstreaming Hate. So the counter of this, the anti-immigrant movement in the US. So the counter of this positive story, looking at what Americans are saying that is so out of touch with what's actually happening, that the report has concluded that anti-immigrant sentiment, which was once considered extreme and only on the most extreme fringes, has become increasingly mainstreamed over the last 10 years. That anti-immigrant and anti-refugee fervor has made life substantially more difficult for all immigrants. Anti-immigrant groups have successfully moved the Overton window. It's the boundary of what's considered acceptable. So if you think of a right versus left spectrum chart, and this being a box that overlaps the center, it has really moved the issue of regarding immigration and migrant workers, considering what is acceptable within political action and public discourse, moving it far to extreme language in terms of how those issues are discussed. The group's ideologies have been brought into the mainstream by policymakers who appear to agree with the rhetoric of these extremist groups and who have sought to institute harsh anti-immigrant laws nationwide. I mean, just again, think of what Stephen Miller. I mean, I never would have thought, regardless of what I know about U.S. history, that the things that guy has said and done would be that open. The fact that it was not that it was happening, that's maybe not surprising, but it was pretty much that clear what the intentions were. The report went on to argue that there were decades of failure in reforming immigration policies, ultimately opened the door to more extreme voices that oppose immigration of any kind. The concerns are often based in racism and bigotry and have infiltrated the debate under the guise of representing mainstream conservative points of view. And it also addressed a number of myths regarding immigration in the United States. And I wanted to list a number of these. I know that you're familiar, and I'm sure our listeners are familiar with most of them, but I do think it's important to point out, like replacement theories, coded language that warns that of things like white genocide or invasions like the Reconquista and conspiracy theory, the idea that Mexican immigrants are plotting to take over the southwest part of the US, or that anti-immigrant groups and activists claim that Muslim immigrants and refugees are terrorists or sympathetic to terrorism, or the myth that terrorists are coming through the US-Mexico border, which is completely unfounded. Many of the myths focus on undocumented immigrants in the US, and one is that undocumented immigrants hurt the US financially by taking jobs and social services without paying taxes. So in the US, immigrants across the board actually help to create new jobs. In addition to buying American and local products, which of course helps create jobs, undocumented immigrants have started their own businesses. And some studies have shown that on average, undocumented immigrants pay more taxes than they receive in benefits, meaning that the taxes they pay more than cover the cost of things like public education and healthcare. And with very, very few exceptions, undocumented immigrants are not eligible for public benefits such as Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, or food stamps. Another particularly harmful myth links undocumented immigrants to increased crime and violence, as you and I both saw on YouTube.
Yes.
So research from 2012 and 2016, 2018 showed that undocumented immigrants in Texas were less than half as likely to be arrested for violent crimes or drug offenses, and less than a quarter as likely to be arrested for property crimes compared to US born Texans.
Boom, Texans.
And the criminal conviction rate for legal immigrants was about 85% below the US born rate. Another report shows that states with larger shares of undocumented immigrants tended to have lower crime rates than states with smaller shares in the years from 1990 to 2014. And it said that increases in the undocumented immigrant population within states are associated with significant decreases in the prevalence of violence. So it does acknowledge that's a simple correlation. And it's well documented that many factors beyond immigration can affect crime at any certain time. So the researchers ran a number of statistical analyses to more clearly isolate the effects of illegal immigration from those other factors. And among other things, they find that the relationship between high levels of illegal immigration and low levels of crime persists even after controlling for various economic and demographic factors such as age, urbanization, labor market conditions, and incarceration rates. Greg, another myth rooted in a long history of ethno-nationalism, racism, posits that undocumented immigrants bring diseases into the US. And maybe people were only got a taste of this for the first time, considering the spike in hate crimes against Asian Americans since the COVID-19 pandemic. So these this like combination of myth, misinformation, racist trope has all become so mainstreamed that it's just what people think is true, even if they don't have the harmful intentions of being racist or opposing people. They literally think those things to be true.
Yeah. And so, Keith, I just want to, just give you my complete admiration and respect for breaking down so many of the myths that pervade our society today. That was so well said. And I just wanted to tell you right now that I'm so glad that you did all that and said all that. And, it brings us really nicely to the next line. I stand not by my country, but by people of the whole fucking world.
Oh, it's so good.
No fences, no borders, free movement for all. Fuck the border. This is what is up to me, man. This is a rejection of nationalism, a rejection of tribalism. It is a realization and an affirmation that the right to seek a safe place to live is on the Declaration of Universal Human Rights from the United Nations. And I came across some quotes about borders, and so many people who do not live near borders comment on them a lot. I know people who comment on borders, and they live in Missouri. So but I found that Texas politician Beto O'Rourke, who said, part of the job for me and others from El Paso who live along the border is to dispel the myths about how supposedly dangerous the border is. And this struck me in a way that it wouldn't had I always just stayed in Missouri. But I lived in Mexico in 2007 and 2008. And what I came to see is how much people in Mexico love Mexico.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
This was actually a surprise to me. Okay.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
I was like, I moved to Mexico with the ridiculous assumption that everybody in Mexico just wanted to move to the US.
Yep. I know what you mean.
That is how stupid I was. I'm still pretty kind of stupid sometimes, but that is what I actually thought. Okay. And, I was like, wow, people in Mexico love Mexico. And, how everybody I talked to said how much they love their country, how they would never want to live anywhere else but Mexico. And I feel like I had grown up my whole life being told that everybody in Mexico just wanted to live in the US. So that was really a big shock to me. And, it wasn't, guess what? I was completely wrong about my assumption. So how fabulous that was. And another quote that resonates with me in relation to this quote comes from Nadia Murad, who is an Iraqi activist, who said the world has only one border. It's called humanity. The differences between us are small compared to our shared humanity. Put humans first. And it's unfortunate how little we seem to have the ability to heed these words. And I'm so grateful I've had the chance to live on multiple sides of multiple borders to normalize the view of how lives are lived in places around the globe that I am not from, Best thing I was ever able to do in life is that. So I'm just so glad for that.
Well, Greg, I know exactly what you mean. The conceited and self-important view that what we have is so good that people are willing to give up their families, their friends, their memories, their language, their culture, the places that they've known their whole lives to come here to the US. It's really an unfounded idea that there are those who do so out of desperation, out of survival, out of necessity, out of sacrifice for other people. But just like I am not willing to give up everything and set out by foot to Switzerland, where people have a far higher standard of living than I do. Like that's certainly not happening across the globe, where people are willing to trade that in. And this line has always reminded me of a quote from Thomas Paine, and I love this quote so much that I'm like, I had to have already shared it. So I tried to go back through my notes and see, like, I had to have mentioned it already.
Control F.
I don't think I did. Oh, I use that all the time. So I don't think I did. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So Thomas Paine said, "The world is my country, all mankind are my brethren, and to do good is my religion."
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
this is like the hardcore punk version of the most radical founding fathers proclamation of humanity, right? That's what that is. It's a proclamation of humanity. And that sort of selfless sentiment, removed from nationalism or ethnocentrism, religious dogma, whatever, that seems harder and harder to find anymore, where you actually have a no strings attached commitment to human beings.
Mm-hmm.
That's rare,
It is.
unfortunately. And that's why this is honestly one of my favorite propaganda lyrics of all time. I love that it's emblazoned on the fuck the border shirt.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that it doesn't have the F word on it, so I can wear it around in my community where I teach and not, be seen by parents or whatever. Because they see the rest of it, I don't care. But of course, I get in trouble for the F word. But I love that lyric.
Well, we've got this next line. I think this is my favorite part. It's about time to it's about fucking time to treat people with respect. It's our culture and consumption that makes her life unbearable. Fuck this country. It's angry eyes. It's knee-jerk hordes. I can't, legal or illegal. Watch her fucking go. She'll take what's hers. Watch her fucking go. Yeah. Fuck the border. Yeah. I talked about the differences in the final line with Todd in the interview, but the original and the 2021 reissue version vary on this lyric. So this is the one that has the different lyrics. So if you haven't heard that compared the 2021 and the 2001 versions, the difference is in this last line. We went into the original version and how it varies from Jason Livermore's new version and Todd's interview, which if anybody out there is listening to this episode and you skipped Todd's interview, I can't imagine there's a single
What's wrong
person.
with you?
Well, that's crazy. So anyway, I just want to say I'm glad the song is written depicting the experience of a migrant woman.
Yeah. I think that's a super important observation. The narrative, the experiences described, for example, in Night Letters, aren't tethered to any pronouns. So they feel like it could describe just a wider range of people. But Todd's use here of she and her make the song more specific, more focused in whom he is singing and screaming about. And I agree. I appreciate that a lot.
And I can picture people, I just can. So, and I also found a little bit more information from the American Immigrant Council on the lives of migrant women. And I just want to share a couple of things before we bring this in for a landing.
Cool.
There are more than 23 million women immigrants in the United States today. And, they outnumber men immigrants. Nearly a third of immigrant women are 25 and older and have a bachelor's degree. Or more education. So that's pretty cool. Immigrant women account for nearly 16% of all employed women ages 16 and older in the United States. Interestingly, women from the Philippines, El Salvador, Vietnam, Dominican Republic, and Colombia have higher rates of participation in the labor force than U.S.-born women. Immigrant women work in every occupation, with over 1/3 in management, business, science, and arts occupations, while nearly a third work in service occupations and under a quarter work in sales and office occupations. But Mexico is the single largest country of origin for immigrant women and girls. Mexico accounted for about a quarter of all female immigrants in 2018. But immigrant women in the labor force earn less than any other demographic. Immigrant women in the labor force had an annual median income of $27,600 in 2018. compared to 32,300 for US born women, or 38,000 for foreign born men, and 45,000 for US born men. So there is a pay discrepancy here, which is completely unsurprising. So there's just, a lot to consider here. And you and I can only go into so much on a podcast episode about a song. But these are people's lives. And I encourage everybody out there listening. We have some of the coolest listeners ever. And I know that so many of you are, you care about issues, which is like, I think that why you all are so cool and friends with us. But just, there's only so much we can talk about on this particular song. So just keep reading, keep digging. But Keith, I know we found some unfortunate YouTube comments.
Yeah.
Here's one from YouTube. If you weren't aware, corn from Mexico made up a large chunk of the country's GDP in the 80s, and it is hardly grown now. Corn from the US sells at about 10% of what it costs anywhere else, as the government subsidizes farmers for the full cost of the corn that they sell. So every farmer unloads his crops at cheap prices. Anything they sell is pure profit because they can't collect that subsidy if they don't sell the corn. You should watch Food Inc. to get an idea of the impact.
That person was listening to the song. That person was picking up what was actually being said.
Yeah. There is a comment here that I pulled from what I wrote down here. Is I wrote, some dingus wrote, that's easy to say when you're from Canada and there's no real threat. I love the music, but just stay out of politics, especially US politics. If you live in a bordering state and you see it firsthand, then you can talk. And I replied, LOL, to this person.
That was a perfect voice that you read that in.
I was in full character.
Yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that any member of Propagandy, past or present, knows more about U.S. politics and immigration policy than that chud. Then also, does that mean that Propagandy shouldn't write songs about like East Timor and Iraq and Indonesia as well, since they're not from there?
Well,
there's the bumper sticker, listeners.
Yeah, seriously. And like the fact that Propagandy does write songs about East Timor, Iraq, Indonesia, First Nations land rights issues, things like that have brought so much value to my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, that was just a bummer of a comment, but I know that you found some too.
I got a bummer one too. It says, I grew up with this band, even saw them play in Guadalupe, California, where I live, and I had some correspondence with them. Unfortunately, they are wrong about the border. If you don't have doors on your house, you get robbed. And that's what's happening in my state. Peace.
Dude.
They should get They should get like doors on their houses.
That's what I'm saying. I commented. Wow. I screenshotted that and I was like, so you're saying,
man,
that if you don't have a door, someone will come into your house.
He should be less worried about building a wall and getting a door in his damn house.
Get a door, buddy. Get a door.
I used to listen to Propagandy, but now I post xenophobic false analogies is one hell of a heel turn. I don't know if I would admit that in public. So, okay, those are the terrible ones.
Oh God.
They got a couple good ones. One says, it's crazy how an almost 20-year-old song can resurface and scream in relevance.
Mm-hmm.
Another comment on a live video said, Sue Lin is such a badass.
Ooh, I saw that one because that's the one that Sue Lin sings a ton of the vocals.
Yeah. And that reminds me of the Fest 2016 performance when they start with Fuck the Border.
Yeah.
And Sue Lin screams, and you could tell Chris is caught off. Chris is caught off a little bit, and he makes this really funny face. Like he's just totally not expecting Sue Lin to start screaming that. It's so good.
Love it.
And then this is a really good one. This is good to end with. It says, one of the few bands to come through the 90s with some dignity.
Awesome. Well, there are so many covers of this song online that tons of bands have done over the years. And I wanted to highlight some because there's just some that are so good. A really rad one was done by a band from St. Louis called Blight Future, and it appeared on a compilation called Nora Fest, a benefit for the stray rescue of St. Louis. The song is not available as a standalone download, so I could not get a sample of it without getting the comp. But it's really good, and the comp supports a good cause. So if you go to thelionsdaughter.bandcamp.com, you can find Blight Futures cover of Fuck the Border, and it's really good. So definitely go check out the Nora Fest Benefit for Stray Rescue of St. Louis compilation. Folks will remember that our chat on the Less Talk More Rock episode with Shane Told from Silverstein. And in that episode, I included Silverstein's version of Fuck the Border because it was appropriate because Shane is in Silverstein and was on the episode and they covered the song. So don't forget to check out Silverstein's version. It's really great. And it's sung by Billy from Silverstein. I think Shane plays bass on it, not sings. So I think that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll get Bill from Silverstein on the podcast sometime. Another one is performed by Almeida and the Human Project, and there's a really solid live version on YouTube that people can find. But I wanted to show a couple of clips. I found a death grind band from Denver called Circle of Defeat.
Awesome.
And so check out this little clip from this death grind band from Denver. So that's cool.
And that's a Nazem song title too. So that sounds like a Nazem reference.
Oh, neat. Maybe we should get somebody from Nazem on the podcast sometime. We'll have to track them down. Anyway, so Screaming Fastcore did another cover, but Screaming Fastcore is a project from Lima, Peru, where all the songs are converted into Nintendo style 8-bit songs. And he does the whole record. People have heard me like squawking over some of these over the last couple of months. But they're available for really cheap at screamingfastcore.bandcamp.com. So here is a snippet of what their version of Fuck the Border sounds like. All right, so that's pretty cool. I love those 8-bit Nintendo style covers. Here's another band from Vermont called The Path performing Fuck the Border. And here is one more from a band, I believe they're from Europe, called Bonnie Somalia. And so if you go to bonniesomalia.bandcamp.com, you can find this.
So treat me with respect, it's a cultural consumption that makes your life a terrible. Fuck this country, it's every eye, easy arms.
All right, so I just wanted to include some clips in here of some bands that you may not have heard of from around the world performing this song. It's a super enticing song for bands to cover. It's nice and short. It's nice and fast. It's very straightforward. The guitars aren't impossible to play. So this is a good one. There's a whole bunch of great cover versions out there. But thank goodness I had the opportunity to live on other sides of multiple borders. Growing up in Missouri, after growing up in Missouri, being exposed to like a progressively worse national conversation about immigration that always focused on what immigrants took instead of what they give to this country.
Yeah, good point, man.
I can't really begin to express my good fortune of going to and living in places that all too many Americans just associate with margaritas, tacos, and Cancun, and how much of Mexican and Central American culture is beloved in this country, but how little the people associated with those cultural aspects are not. So we tend to overwhelmingly love things that come from the countries to the south of the US border, but we just don't extend the same love to the human beings associated from those cultures. And it's really just a sad state of affairs to me that, people just get used as political manipulation points for elections on, our national news cycle. So that's just kind of what I'm taking away from this. But I've learned a lot from doing some research for this tune, and I had a really good time chatting with you about it.
Yeah, Greg, I guess my big takeaway, my big thoughts that I'm kind of holding on to is browsing a lot of articles about immigration, about border walls. I really came across a lot of art and graffiti protest art that left me speechless. And one art piece that really stood out is called Monarch Mimicry. And it's a mural by Flagstaff, Arizona based artist Sean Scabalund. So with 60 volunteers, he painted the border fence white and decorated it with 1,000 glow-in-the-dark butterflies. And he said, I chose butterflies because it's a symbol of hope in Mexican culture. It's a great migration pattern we humans need to learn from. We need an imaginative migration policy that allows people to go in, work, and come back just like butterflies do. They migrate, come to the US, feast on milkweed, plants, mate, and come back. That's their life. That was such a profound metaphor that I wanted to end with that image of hope for some reform, and not just in the law books of America, but changes in the minds and hearts of Americans that allows for human beings to move and thrive and not just get by or survive.
In the time you were saying that, I Googled that Sean Scabalund and Monarch Mimicry, and I found it, and it's wonderful. Well, Keith, I think it's pretty obvious that this song is a 5.
Oh, yeah.
I think that Fuck the Border and Night Letters are the two most well-loved Todd Kowalski propaganda songs. These two songs, which we have done back to back, coincidentally, capture every sound that I think that Todd really has brought to this band within these two songs, Night Letters and Fuck the Border. And the songs that every propaganda want to hear live from Todd, and brings about the evocative storytelling of a narrative of a life, all wrapped up in, a challenging but digestible message about the need to put human lives and well-being over arbitrary lines on random pieces of land on our earth. But it's a 5. It's one of the all-time greats for this band for sure.
No, I agree. It's hands down. It's a 5. Fuck the Border is raw. It's visceral. It perfectly encapsulates Todd's earlier hardcore sound and his career spanning themes of empathy and humanity. It's a perfect song.
Well, thank you so much to Todd himself for coming on the podcast and chatting about the origin and the evolution of this particular song, for going back into his I Spy memories with me. Thank you so much to Barney from Hops Records for allowing me to include the full cover of Fuck the Border in this episode. Thank you to Todd Kowalski from Recess Records, who has graciously provided the iSpy20 discount code for 20% off store-wide at recessrecords.com, where you can buy iSpy's 10-inch Revenge of the Little Shits. Thank you to vitchcraft.shop for the discount on the ACLU benefit Fuck the Border print. Lots of great stuff in this episode. Just the coolest people. And that's just one of my favorite things about doing this show is the awesome, fantastic people that we continuously are in contact with. But if you want to find us, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at PropagandyPod. You can email us at propagandypod@gmail.com. And I think that maybe we'll close this out with Propagandy.
from people the whole fucking world.